Hey guys, Paul from Paulskarts here. Today we got a Predator 212 HEMI cylinder head. This one here is for a 27-25 valve. So we got, this one actually has the welded intake tube. This is very similar to the one that we have on the site that has the copper seats. This is just the non-copper seat version with the welded intake tube. This one also has the epoxy port added as an option. So the welded intake tube and epoxy port, especially in the HEMI heads, the epoxy port is more, it gives more advantage in the HEMI head because of the bowl shape on the HEMI and because of the way the approach is on the port. If you look at the HEMI head's intake port, let me see if I can show you. Let me grab a small light real quick. I keep a small keychain on my flashlight. Now this is a bad color light. It's like that ultra blue light, but see, with the epoxy port, you can radius the back of the port. If you try to radius the back of the port without epoxy, what you'll do is end up with too tall of a port, so it'll be too deep. So they're already pretty deep, so you don't want to deepen the back of that port to try to get a radius back there. So what you got to do is, it's got to be shaped with epoxy. Now, the HEMI head is a great head when used correctly. When used with the welded intake tube and the epoxy port, they take this great bias, and when you put it on a wet flow bench, you will see so much fuel distribution around that valve. When it comes to selecting a cylinder head, you're really looking at two things: the flow capability of the cylinder head and the velocity of the cylinder head. Do they match your engine? Any cylinder head you can rework to make it fit your engine. The HEMI heads have a large chamber, so these are best. Your goal realistically is to make a system that works. So the head has to match the flow of the bottom end and at a high velocity. Also, it has to achieve the compression ratio high enough to run the camshaft. Now, most camshafts require a 12-to-1 compression ratio or higher in order to make the camshaft valve timing events work correctly. If say the compression ratio isn't high enough, you could end up with too much back pressure in the cylinder and it doesn't evacuate 100%, so it can't get a fresh charge in there, and you're really not making enough dynamic compression ratio to bring the torque levels up to a point where it's an improvement. So as the camshaft get racier and racier, they need more compression ratio because the timing events are happening at something that's more suitable for higher RPMs. And when you think about your compression ratio, a lot of people think about it as, all right, let me just take, okay, I have a 212 bottom end and I have a 14cc head, so I take the 212 into the 14cc and that's my compression ratio. Well, realistically, the camshaft is going to depict your compression ratio because where that intake valve closes, you can't build compression before that intake valve closes, so the piston's coming down on the exhaust stroke and then it starts coming back up. At some point after it starts coming back up, it's going to close that intake valve. And from that point up, that's when it's drawing in the new charge. So, you know, it's you really got to have the cam time and events. So if the on the compression stroke, I'm sorry, not the intake stroke, and that's not when it starts drawing in. So when the piston starts coming down on the exhaust stroke, on the intake stroke, when the piston starts coming down on the intake stroke, and then it goes to bottom dead center and starts coming up, that's when it'll close the intake valve. And from that point forward to the top of when it's on its compression stroke, that's how you measure the compression volume for your engine. So you can't just think that, oh, I have a 14cc head on a 3-inch stroker, it's going to be 18-to-1 compression ratio. By changing the cam timing events and closing that exhaust valve later and later, you're actually making the cam racier and racier, and actually the dynamic compression ratio is a lot lower because it's not squeezing that entire volume. It's complicated. If you really look at it on a cycle chart where you can visualize it with the piston going up and down, you can get a much better understanding of it. But we got the large chamber on this one, so on a 212 it's going to be low on compression ratio. You can mill them a bit on the HEMIs, but as you mill the HEMI head, you're actually bringing the valves down closer to the piston. The cantered valves of the HEMI head, where the valves are sitting at an angle, not flat to the piston, that bottom edge gets awfully close to the piston. So the more you mill the head, when you go like 32/28 on a HEMI head, you know, you can't really run any ratio rocker. You can't really run any racing cam. Maybe like a 260 lift on a 32/28 without cutting the valve relief in the piston. You know, once you start getting into like, you know, a 300 lift, or if you're going for 400 lift, you know, you're going to be in big trouble on a big valve. You're going to need very deep valve release. I don't think you can run 400 lift in a HEMI. I think the most we've ever got was like maybe a 32/28 with you know, maybe 340 lift, somewhere around there, and that's with very deep valve reliefs on the piston and a thick head gasket, like a 45 thousandths head gasket. We would run that on like a welded chamber head, normally with the HEMI heads we like to do 28.5/28 valves, or 28/28 welded chamber, and on like a 72 millimeter bore, mill it, you know, say 40 thousandths, and cut the piston valve reliefs in the piston, like you know, 100 thousandths deep, and you know, you can make good power with them then, because that way you have the compression ratio correct to run the camshaft, you have good flow, good velocity, and it's a good package. HEMI heads, great heads, you just need to know how to use them. It's really all in the setup, and it's like that for anything. But this thing with the bronze valve guide, spring pockets cut, you got to be careful cutting the spring pockets on a HEMI head, especially when you got like welded intake tubes where it's a big port you don't want to break through down in that corner. It's tricky to repair. It is possible, but it's very tricky, time consuming, and the first few times you do it, you're going to be sweating and thinking it's impossible, but it is possible to repair that. So if you do have damage in that area, if you've broken through and you think the head's trash, you can call me, send me some pictures, and maybe we can salvage it. is the front of the head, is the exhaust port. Combustion chamber, multi-angle valve job. This one comes with the stainless steel valves, the SI valves. Stainless steel valves, billet retainers, 37-pound big red stripe springs, and it does come with the keepers. They're just in a bag somewhere. But great cylinder head, especially when you have the welded intake tube and the epoxy port. These things can get really good. So check this out. It's going to be on the site. I'm going to take some pictures of it because we have it listed with the copper seats, but we don't have it set up this way without the copper seats. So, you know, it's kind of hard for me to keep up with the website these days because it just takes so much time to upload something and get the information back and forth from the web designer and get the listing, you know, set up correctly, and I have to reread it and proof it and this and that, and it's a back and forth. It takes so long to get one listing up. So, but I'll try to get this listing up. It's a cool cylinder head and makes a lot of power. So check this out. Check us out, Paulskarts.com, website Paulskarts.com. You can email us. You can email us at paulskarts@gmail.com. You can also contact us through the website. There's a contact us button. So through site contact us button. And you can text or call. Text that number, 781-492-7358. So guys, I'm Paul. This is Paulskarts. This is the Predator 212 2725 head with the welded intake tube, epoxy ports, bronze guide, stainless steel valve trade, polished everything, you know, yada 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 shit. So until next time, guys, have a nice day.